Now, a little while back, Donald Trump, in one of his usual midnight fervors, decided that he was going to tweet out in the middle of the night about how Obama was wiretapping him through his microwave or whatever. In fact, here, I'll give you the exact tweets now. He said, "Is it legal for a sitting president to be wiretapping a race for president prior to an election, turned down by court earlier, a new low?" And then said, "I'd bet a good lawyer could make a great case out of the fact that President Obama was tapping my phones in October, just prior to the election." Later, they would go on to pretend that he was just speaking generally. I believe that the word he used was fact. The fact that President Obama was tapping my phones, okay? But you know, he's a knucklehead, so his advisors keep saying, you should take the president seriously, but not literally, because he's a sociopathic liar. So all this was, of course, drivel. It's not true. And where did he get it from? We found out later he got it from Breitbart and Mark Levin, okay? Bunch of idiots who make up stuff all the time, but the president's an idiot who's also a conspiracy theorist, so he believed them instead of actually checking with the CIA, the FBI, who are all at his disposal because he's the president. He doesn't even know he's president. That's how dumb he is. Okay, one last tweet from him at the time. How low has President Obama gone to tap my phones? Of course, misspelled it. During the, hey dude, double check your spelling, you're the president. All right, anyway, but it's in the middle of the night, it's 4:02 a.m. This guy, he doesn't get any sleep. This guy's a lunatic. Anyway, how low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon/Watergate, bad or sick guy. These are gigantic, heavy charges against the former president. But he doesn't realize the consequences of his actions, the gravity of his words, the gravity of his position. It's just like, oh man, Breitbart told me at 4 in the morning, I'm gonna tweet this out, this guy's sick. Okay, now at the time I did a whole story about why it was, of course, very unlikely to be true, but what he was referring to was that there might be a real investigation. But hey, knucklehead, you might not wanna point that out because that's an investigation of how you colluded with the Russians. Here's what I said at the time. So this is a very interesting story, but Trump should be a little bit careful what he asked for. If you ask for an investigation into why they wanted a warrant, then you might accidentally release the evidence that they had on you. Oops. Well, here we are at oops. So they bring in James Comey, the head of the FBI, to do a hearing. Because hey, you asked for a hearing, you got a hearing. So first of all, was Obama wiretapping you? Let's find out.
Director Comey, was the president's statement that Obama had his wires tapped in Trump Tower a true statement?
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
The president accused Mr. Obama and presumably the FBI of engaging in McCarthyism. Were you engaged in McCarthyism, Director Comey?
Try very hard not to engage in any isms of any kind, including McCarthyism.
His initial charges against Obama, bunk, not true. But wait a minute, what about that idea of getting himself in trouble? Because we then find out there was a real investigation of him colluding with the Russians. Well, let's go to that section of the hearings.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
Oops. Now we have the sitting FBI director saying there is an official investigation that includes individuals associated with the Trump campaign colluding with the Russian government. Well, now what are you gonna do, knucklehead? I'm talking about Donald Trump. You're gonna remove James Comey for investigating you? Well, harder to do that because he just said it in public that he's investigating you. Then you look ridiculous. Now, none of this had to happen right now and in this way if Donald Trump hadn't tweeted in the first place and demanded investigations. Oops, I told you. Look, one part of the I told you is the immediate one. don't open up this can of worms, it's gonna come back to bite you. And of course, he's an idiot, didn't listen. The second part is, I told you there is no great plan behind Donald Trump and his tweets. It's not some brilliant strategy where then, okay, and after he tweets that and he diverts attention to this instead of that, and then he's so clever. There's no clever, he's an idiot. It's that simple. Okay, so now he recognizes his mistake. Now he's trying to tweet in the other direction. So today, as the hearings are going on, he tweets, the real story that Congress, the FBI, and all others should be looking into is the leaking of classified information. Must find leaker now. And this story's fake news, everyone knows it. Also, by the way, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, etc. So even before things got started. Because then Breitbart must have told him, hey, sorry about that other thing, because it turns out he's gonna say on the record that he's investigating you. You're really screwed up. Don't investigate that. I meant don't investigate. Don't wiretaps. And whatever. The Russian stuff's fake news. A little too late, Donnie. A little too late. And then he tweets again. Democrats made up and pushed the Russian story as an excuse for running a terrible campaign. Big advantage in electoral college and lost. So, Donnie, cat's out of the bag. Sad day for you. So now we all know there's an official investigation of how you might have colluded with the Russian government. By the way, if you're wondering, hey, what's the big deal? Well, there's two sides to a trade. The Russians want Trump in, and you think, well, the other side of the trade is Trump gets to be president. I'm telling you, that might not be the only side of that trade. Because Trump, what does he care about the most? Money. So let's see where that investigation goes. And from time to time, they like to quote, and some of our hosts do as well. James Clapper, for example, saying recently that there's no evidence of collusion yet. Well, that's saying, hey, have you finished the investigation and you have hard evidence yet? Well, he hasn't finished the investigation. So saying that there isn't evidence yet to definitively prove that Trump and the Russians had an exact deal doesn't mean that that evidence doesn't exist. It means that we have not finished our investigation. By the way, it also doesn't mean that this is the only reason the Democrats lost. The Democrats are incompetent. They lost for 1,000 different reasons. They lost to an orange buffoon who almost any of you, like literally, we could have picked a random dude from in the middle of the country and beat this clown, okay? And the Democrats lost to him for many reasons. So it is not an excuse for the Democrats. Doesn't mean that he didn't also do a deal with the Russians. So now, hopefully we'll get to find out, because there's an actual investigation, which Donald can't take back. All right, but I'm gonna add one last thing here, which is fun, or two last things. One is they asked Peter King. Peter King's no genius either, but a Republican Congressman from New York. But he's got enough political sense to be like, backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. Here, watch.
Do you want the White House to drop this altogether? Is it time for them to move on?
Well, I wish the issue hadn't been raised, because quite frankly, this hearing would have been going ahead anyway this week or next week, and we would have been focusing on the extent of Russian influence in the election, which is a real issue. Listen, I think there was something there in the extent that there could have been information that worked its way to the media, worked its way to Democrats that came from either investigations or surveillance or whatever, but to overshoot it by saying that President Obama intentionally did it, no, I see no evidence.
So what should the White House do now? Should they completely walk it back? Should the President of the United States apologize to his predecessor?
I'm going to get through today's hearing first. I'm not going to tell the president what to do, but I wouldn't have said it in the first place.
Wouldn't have said it in the first place. I told you, there is no grand strategy. He's just stupid. So speaking of which, in the middle of the hearings, he tweets out, the NSA, and use the official POTUS account too on top. The NSA and FBI tell Congress that Russia did not influence the electoral process. So since he did it in the middle of the hearings, they then turn to Comey and they go, is that true? Is the FBI saying that they did not influence the electoral process? Comey responds, it certainly wasn't our intention to say that today, because we don't have any information on that subject. Basically saying the same thing I said just a little while ago, which is, no, the investigation has not concluded. I can't tell you anything about the investigation. If you're asking me for evidence within that investigation, I'm not going to give it to you because we're in the middle of the investigation. But if you say, as Trump just did, that there is no such evidence, and I'm saying that, no, I cannot confirm that. Obviously there's evidence, otherwise they wouldn't be doing the investigation. And then you force them to say, yes, there is evidence, I just can't tell you what it is. No grand strategy. Just an orange buffoon sitting up in the middle of the night without a clue as to what he's doing. Support independent media and get the whole Young Turks 2-hour show and other network shows all ad-free. TYTnetwork.com/join. Come join us today.